This is Shabbos Daf Ches. We were talking about if something would happen on a regular day in the afternoon, a person doing certain activities, whether or not he has to stop at Dav Mincha, whether or not he has to stop at Dav Mariv, or whether the Mishnah is actually talking about Mincha, which is obviously what it's mentioned, and also talking about Mariv, and we can infer from that. And now the Gemara is going to go further and talk about the different items that the Mishnah was talking about. So, Kedaha, like the following incident. Rabbi Shmuel ben Levi Hava Yalef Shama Parshta Min Bar Brei Aruva Shuba. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi would listen to the entire portion of his grandson every Erev Shabbos. Chadzman Inche. One time he forgot or he got busy. Well, Mische Behan de Moisin de Tiberia, and he went to one of the bathhouses that were there in Tiberia. Vahava Mismechech Al Kamsped Rav Chia Bar Abba, and he was there and he was leaning up against on the shoulder of Rav Chia Bar Abba. So in Har Dala Shema Parzonim Bar Bere, and he remembered that he did not hear the Torah portion of his grandson. So the Chazar of Benafaglei, he returned and he left the bathhouse and he went to go listen. So apparently he would listen to his grandson prepare the Torah portion for Shabbos, every Erev Shabbos, or at least maybe he would be doing Shnayim Mikra Targum, or something along those lines as he read the Torah portion. So he would listen to his grandson every Erev Shabbos, and one Erev Shabbos he was in the bathhouse. It does not say it was actually late. It doesn't say it was in the afternoon. It doesn't say he was getting close to Shabbos. It just says the time that he used to go to listen to his grandson had come, and he realized that he was in the bathhouse and had not listened to his grandson again. Again, it could have been in the morning, but the point was the time to listen to Torah had come, and he had not listened to it, so he left. So now the Gemara is going to wonder, what exactly is the start time for someone in the bathhouse? How do we prove from this story? What stage was he in? So we say, Mahave, so what was it? So Rab Dursa says, Kachave, is as related, that he was leaning on him. He hasn't done anything yet. He got in there. He was leaning on his friend, Rav Chia Barba, and he was about to disrobe. Rab Lazar, Rabbi Yisrael, Rab Lazar says, Shaliach Monday Have. No, he had already disrobed. Amalei Rabbi Chia Bar Abba. Rabbi Chia Bar Abba says, the law came Alfin Rebbe, but did Rebbe not decree already to us? Someone who starts or something does not stop. So Amalei, they said to him, it's true, he was able to start, and you're right, he might have been putter. He might have been putter from Mincha or something else like that at that time, or even to do a learning. But Amalei said to him, Kolahi b'einecha, but is this something that's so trivial in your eyes? Deshakol shemei parsha min bin b'nai ki'ilu hu shema mehar Sinai. Don't you know that listening to the Torah from your son and your grandson is as if listening to the Torah from Har Sinai itself? My timer, what's the reason of this? That we know this. So you should make the words of Torah known to your children and your grandchildren. The day that you stood before your God, Hashem, by Har Chorev. So whenever you're learning Torah with your son, your grandson, it's so special and so important. It's like learning Torah from Har Sinai. In that situation, what are you going to do? You're going to take a bath, or you're going to listen to the Torah? Obviously, he felt like he had no choice. And by the way, now the Gemara is going to wonder as follows. What happens if a person is about to start something or did start something, and then all of a sudden something else like Torah or Tefillah or Shema came? Does he have to stop at the time? Because remember, he already started, so technically he does not have to stop. And that, even though the halacha did not have to stop, the question is, if he did stop, what's his status? Reb Chizkiah, Rabbi Yirmiyah, Rabbi Chia, B'Shem Yechanan. So im yachol at l'shal es hashmua ad Moshe. If you're able to quote someone who said Torah all the way up to Moshe Rabbeinu, so then you say it in that link. V'imlav, if not, Tipoish Rishon. You grasp the first people you heard it from, V'achron the last people you heard it from. So in other words, let's say you said, okay, I know that my Rebbe was a Talmud Muvik of, Bandovich Yeshiva, and there's a Talmud Muvik of this one, a Talmud Muvik of that one, and you're going back. So then you say, okay, this is how we learned the Torah. My Rebbe, who was a Talmud, heard from his Rebbe, heard from his Rebbe. If you don't know that, then you just quote the source. My time, what's the reason? Children should be a link from child to child to grandchildren to generation to generation. That day, they teaching children and grandchildren, which is today, teaching your children and grandchildren, and all the way a link that goes back to Har Chayrev. So Har Chayrev, Moshe Rabbeinu taught the Torah, and we know that it was taught to Bnei Yisrael all the time, and then generation after generation learned it. So you go up the chain back up to our Sinai. So there's two ways of learning it. One learning it is Pashut, you're quoting the person who said it. So it's very important to quote the person who said it, and the Gemara is going to say it's very also important to know the person who said it to make sure it's an authentic source and know who you're quoting. You just see it in a random sefer, you heard from a random thing, don't just start quoting things not knowing who you're quoting from, why you're quoting from them. You should quote from established sources. The second thing is, it's not only just quoting the sources back up to Moshe Rabbeinu, but it's making sure that the Torah gets quoted from Moshe Rabbeinu. In other words, whenever you're trying to learn halacha, you always try to link it back to the Torah. If it's a mitzvah d'oraisa, if it's something that's even hinted out in the Torah, then the source you should primarily use is go back to the Torah. Quote the Chumash. That's number one thing. If it's a minig that's establishing something that it's a mitzvah and how to practice it, and you learn it from Nach, then quote the Nach, and you get it from Nach. You don't get mitzvahs from Nach, but you get minig and how things are practiced from Nach. If it's not from the Torah, it's not the Oraisa, it's Midrabanan. So now you quote from the Gemara. Make sure you quote from the Gemara or from the Mishnah. You go to the earliest source possible that quotes something. So you could say, well, the Shulchan Aruch says you have to wash on 2 slices of pizza. Okay, but what's the Shulchan Aruch source? The Shulchan Aruch make it up, or did the Shulchan Aruch have a source? Who said it? The Torah. Who went before the Torah? Was it all the way back from the Aril? Was it the Gaonim? Was it from the Gemara? Obviously, I don't think the Gemara talks about pizza, but you know what I'm trying to say, that when there's a halacha source, you try to quote from the earliest source you can. Obviously, you could quote from Acharon and say, this one holds this, and that's it. That's enough. It's enough for me that Moshe Feinstein held this. It's enough for me that Rav Chaim Kanievsky gave a psak like this. That's enough, obviously, to follow halacha. But when learning Torah and quoting, it's try to work your way up. Gidal Omar. Gidal said, Kol Omer Shemua Mefi Omer. Anyone who says something in the name of the person who said it, Roye Baal Shemua Ki'ilu Hu Omer Kinegda. It's as if the person you heard it from is standing right in front of you, and that gives it a little bit more a little bit more authenticity. How do we know it? To my time, what's the reason? How do we know this? It says, Ach betzelem yishalech ish. Only with the image should a person proceed. Ksiv. It was written, Rav Adam Yikra Ish Chazdai. A great man is a person who proclaims kindness. The Ish Amunim Mim Yibsa, and a person of trust, where can we find him? Rav Adam Yikra Ish Chazdai, a person who is a great man who proclaims kindness. Zer Shar Ka'adam. This refers to all people who report kindness, who talk about the Torah. Vishamunim Miyimsa, and the person of trust, where do you find him? Who's that? Zet Rabbi Zera. This refers to Rabbi Zera. Right? Because Rabbi Zera, Demar Rabbi Zera, this Rabbi Zera said, Less anan sriched chashisha and shmoy Rav Sheshes. We do not have to concern ourselves with Rav Sheshes' lesson, to who gavra pasucha, because his eyes were open, he was blind, he did not necessarily know who said what. So he would hear and he would try to quote people based on who he heard. So in other words, if you don't know the exact person that you're quoting, then it's fine to just quote, generally speaking, say, I heard from here or here. That is good enough. Amar Rab Zera l'Rabbi Yasa. Rab Zera said to Rabbi Yasa, Chachim Rebbe Levar Padya. Is the Rebbe familiar with Rav Padya? You quote Rav Padya. Are you familiar with Rav Padya? So Da'at Amar Shemuel Mishmai, they could say something in his name. Amar Lei says to him, Rabbi Yechanan Amar B'Shmai. Rabbi Yechanan said in his name, and that's good enough for me. I heard from Yechanan, Rabbi Yechanan heard in his name, that's good enough for me. Similar, Amar Rabbi Zera l'Rebbe. Rabbi Zera says, Rebbe Bar Zavda. Do you know Rav Zavda? Chachim Rebbe l'Rav. That is, that Rebbe is familiar with Rav. Daita Amar Shemuel B'Shmai, you can say in his name. Amar Lei says to him, Rav Ada Bar Oven Amar Shmai. No, Rav Ada Bar Oven will say in his name, and therefore I'm saying his name and he's saying his name. So again, quoting exact quote sources is only if you are sure of the exact sources. If you're not sure of the exact sources, you quote generally. If you heard from someone else or from someone else, then you quote from them if that actually second source was reliable. So now, a person's in a tannery. When is that considered finished working? Lai Levorsky. right? A person is in a tannery. He shouldn't start that before, but if he did start, he doesn't stop. Esa chame, come and consider that bedele may sherechoy ra viat amar tachin. You're saying that it's possible that this guy's gonna have to stop to say Shema, but the place is so smelly. You can't say Shema in a place with such bad rayach. So lo asud la. No, it's not like this. It's like this. Mishas gal. So he already put on his apron. However, at that time, he didn't start working yet, so maybe say Shema, or what's Pasha to say is even if he did start working and Kriya Shema came, he could leave the tannery for a few moments to say Kriya Shema. And a person may not eat. I just want to point out the Mishnah says V'loy Loichal Lamid Vav Chaf Lamid, and here the Gemara is correcting it to Lamid Aleph Chaf Vav Lamid Le'echoil. So obviously the Gemara is straightening out the Mishnah and saying that Loichal is Le'echol. Okay, so Haschalas Achilas Ezehi, but where's the beginning of Echol? Rav Acha Rabbi Ba b'Shem Rabbi. Rav Acha Rabbi Ba said the name of Rabbi Mishitel Yadav when he raised his hands to wash them. Rav Acha says Kiddush when he's making Kiddush when he's about to say Kiddush. Rabbi Ba says Lavracha it's Maris when he starts saying the bracha. So I just want to point out a Suda in Masechtas Brachas of Yerushalmi. The way they had sudas back then was not always washing and not always like now. A lot of people have kiddush first. They'll say sudas on Shabbos, and this could be talking during the week also, so you don't have the kiddush. But they would still have wine by a lot of the sudas even during the week. So the order a lot of people see now is kiddush, challah, kiddush washing challah, etc. Back then they would have an appetizer, and then they would have the bread, or they have their wine, and the wine would be during the meal. So it would be appetizer, wine, meal. However, the washing would happen in the beginning, because back then they even washed on fruits and vegetables. So the washing was not necessarily on bread. The washing was in the beginning of the meal, always washing. And it's a good practice. A person should always wash his hands. You go to some place and you sit down to eat, whether it's your own living room, whether it's a restaurant, or whether it's at work, and you're about to eat, even if you're not having bread, don't touch food. Wash your hands. It's good sanitary things that the Rabbanan said 2,000 years ago. Rav Nisan Liyadai. Rav already washed his hands for the meal. Ramaz Chabre Lemuzaiga. Rechia and his son signaled that it was designated to pour the wine. So boy mitan lay. So Rechia wanted to give it to Rav. Amrlay says to him, Kivar is chalnu b'suda, where you begun the suda, and therefore it's not necessarily to stop to either make kiddush or to make other brachas ready to the suda. So in other words, the point of that is that just washing and sitting down, that's already a start of a suda. Dilma, there was an incident that Rabbi Shmei, the Rav Shmuel, Bar Rav Yitzchak, Havan, Yosef, Achla, Bechada, Min, Kishna, Aliyah. So Rav Masna and Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Yitzchak were sitting and eating in one of the upper Bate Kinesias. So Asa, Anse, the Slicer, the time came for Mincha. So, or eight time for eight came. So Kamle Rab Shmuel Bar Rav Yitzchak Mitzaleya. Rab Shmuel Rav Yitzchak interrupted the learning and said, Armalei Rab Shmuel, he said to him, V'la Kain Al Alfan, did not Rebbe teach us that im is chilu a mafsikin, that someone who started to learn does not have to stop, interrupt to say his tefillah? V'tzani Chizkiah Torah, call me Shahu Potter min adavar, anyone who's potter from a thing, v'aisuhu nikra hedyot, is considered an hedyot. An hedyot means a plain person or someone who's inferior. So the question is like this. A lot of Rishonim try to deal with this and say, what is he talking about that it's a hedyot? There are a lot of examples of where a person is potter for something or not required to do something and he doesn't. It's obviously the shevach. It's obviously something good for something to do, take on more mitzvahs. So it means like this. Number one, as we said before, that the time to stop an earlier zman for a tefillah is only for an amaretz, but a person who is a chaver, who knows that the zman, when the zman begins, when the zman ends, and he can finish before that, so then that person should then continue. In other words, let's say mincha plag is coming, but you know you could daven mincha by shkia, so you should continue learning, and then you can daven mincha. That shows that you know where's the zmanim. You're a person who is on top of Zman, you're a master of Zman, and not that you're going to waste away the time, just the opposite. You're going to finish your learning, and then you're going to daven. You're going to end up doing both. The other way we could look at it is if a person constantly is stopping to do everything because something else is coming up, he'll never end up doing anything. And then what's going to happen to him? He can sit for a barber, but then mincha's coming up in a half hour, and then when he's going to take a haircut? By the time he wants to come back take a haircut, then it'll be Mariv, and then Mariv's coming up. And if he wants to go listen to his son, to go his son do laning, but then Chakras is coming or something else is coming, there's always going to be an excuse. A person should be one who is master of Zman, who knows when things are. I know when Chakras is, I know when Mincha is, I know when Mariv is. Therefore, you know what time you have, you know what time you don't have. You have time to learn, you do your learning, you take care of yourself, get everything done. That's how I would say what he means. But anyway, the Gemara itself disputes it. Amrle, they said to him, Vatani, but we learned in the Mishnah, Chasan Potter, Chasan is Potter from Kriyishma. Chasan, him writes a likrois, crier. If a person wants to write, if a Chasan wants to write Kriyishma, he still recites. Amrle, we said to him, Yachal Ana Paser Le Rabbi Gamliel. I interpret it according to Rabbi Gamliel. The Amar Rabbi Gamliel says, Ein Shamia Lachem Levatal Imenu Malchus Shemayim Sha'achas. I would never be Mevatel Malchus Shemayim even for one moment. In other words, whenever I have a time to chaparayim mitzvah, do something, I'm going to chaparayim mitzvah, and I'm going to do it. V'layladin, and a person should not sit in front of a court case or go to judgment before a zman of tefillah is coming. So Rabbi Yirmiyah, Rabbi Yosef, Chadam, one says Mishvu Babdin, one says when the judge is sitting down, the Chorna Amar Mishmichu Toy the same. Another one says when the Tanaim come, when the actual litigants start to stand and say what they want to say. That's the beginning of court cases. If one started, you should not interrupt. But you do interrupt for Kriyishma. They but you do not interrupt for tefillah. And the Gemara is explain why. Amar Vacha says Kriyishma Davar. Kriyishma is midraisa. Tefillah is ain't a Davar Torah, but tefillah is not a Davar Torah. It's only midrabanan. Therefore, you stop for Kriyishma and can say Shema Yisrael and tefillah later. Amar Abba says Kriyishma is monakfor. Kriyishma has its fixed time, whereas tefillah ain't monakfor. Tefillah is not of its fixed time. Now, both of them have the concept of Zrikim Magdimin Lemitzvahs, obviously, and that's why you want to daven earlier. However, Kriya Shema is a Zman. Kriya Shema Zman really is when that Zman comes, that's when the obligation really comes into play and a person. Now, Tefillah has a Zman, a beginning and end of when to say Tefillah. However, the obligation to daven does not necessarily trigger. It's just that if a person was going to daven Shachris, he does it from Alois. He does it from Alois until. And if a person was going to daven Mincha, he does it from Mincha Doila until. A person going to daven Mariv, he does it from Plag, after Plag Mincha until. Okay? We have the beginning and end. That's the time to daven. However, Kriyishma is different. The second this man comes in, he's triggering the obligation to Kriyishma. Every second he's not saying Kriyishma, he's over almost on the mitzvah. He's pushing away the mitzvah every single second. So it's different. With tefillah, you want to do mitzvahs, you want to have it early in the Zman, good. Later in the Zman, that's fine also. Kriyishma, the obligation's already upon him. It's already on him. It's waiting for him to say Kriyishma. So it's a little bit different. Second of all, Kriyishma has a Zman Midaraisa, and which, I mean, it's interpreted by the Rabbanon, but it's a Zman Midaraisa. Whereas Tefillah has nothing with the Daraisa, it's only Rabbanon. Amar Rav Yosef, Rav Yosef says, Kriya Shema in a tzricha kavana. Kriya Shema is not required. Kavana, tefillah tzricha kavana. How is that? Amar Rabbani. Rabbani says, Kashya kumei Rav Yosef. I asked one Rav Yosef. Afilu teimam Kriya Shema ina tzricha kavana. The Kriya Shema does not require kavana. Shloshim psukim v'shanim tzricha kavana. But the first three psukim require kavana. Shema Yisrael Baruch Shem Aviyahafta requires kavana. So min goy linyanon. So this is enough for a person to concentrate. He concentrates for 3 psukim. He concentrates. The rest he'll just say while he's working, while he's getting a haircut, or whatever else is going on. So that's fine. Whereas tefillah, to sit there and actually remember all the words and all the tefillahs and actually try to remember what they mean, even though the first bracha is really we have to have kavanah on, but still, it's a lot more to try to concentrate on. And again, kavanah according to Raisa, not like tefillah, which is Medrabanan. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Shimon ben Yochai, you go. For example, Anush, I was going to about Talmud Torah, those who, like us, or occupy Talmud Torah, Afilu Kriyishma, ain't Anu Mafsik. And even if Kriyishma comes to you not Mafsik, because we're still busy learning Torah all the time, we're able to push off Kriyishma. Rabbi Yechanan Amar Al Gamra, Rabbi Yechanan says regarding himself, Anush, ain't Anu Mafsik about Talmud Torah, Afilu Tefillah, Anu Mafsikin. So we have to interrupt because we're not involved in Torah. I'm not involved in Torah 24 hours a day, or at least from the second I wake until the second I go to sleep. There are times to do other things, and since I'm not involved in Torah every second of the day, I don't feel like it's right to push off Kriya Shema. I feel like I can say Kriya Shema and then go back to my learning. Like, for instance, members in yeshiva, people in yeshiva, they make time for tefillah. That's part of the Seder Yom. You make time for tefillah. If a person's going to really wake up and he's going to start his day learning, and if you learn without a break, basically beyond V'layla, maybe to eat while he's learning, so maybe that you could say you push off. But when we have a zman, you mix in your zmanim and you find time for everything. Day kedaite v'day kedaite. Follow his reasoning and follow his reasoning. Rabbi Yechanan kedaite. Rabbi Yechanan goes to his reasoning. Rabbi Yechanan says halavai muspalim kol yom. If you can only daven all day long. So lama why? She'ain tefila mapsades, because prayer does no harm. Rabbi Shem ben Yochai Gilaita. Rabbi Shem ben Yochai according to his reasoning. Rabbi Shem ben Yochai says, Ilu Havena Kaim Altura the Sinai Nutrata is he have Ivas Oiraisa Israel. If I be standing in Har Sinai, when Torah was given to Israel, Havinu Nusat Kume Rachmana, I would have requested for Hashem the Merciful One. The Yisrael Lahadin Levar Nasa the Trey Fumim. They created two mouths for each and every single person. Chad Dieve Lehe Biraisa. One of them the toilet Torah. The Chad Dieve Bar Tzricha. And one to four was on these. In other words, another mouth so I could breathe, another mouth so I could eat, another mouth so I could do other things. I wish I could not stop even for 1 second to learn Torah. Even though Hashem was about to give the Torah at Sinai, I would start to learn Torah all day long. So therefore, according to Hashem Bayachai, he did not stop to say Kriya Shema. But people who don't do that, aren't in Madrega, and obviously feel like in the need of the power of Tefillah, so then they stop their learning to say Tefillah.